Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. As always, it is Nick here, back with your daily crypto news and analysis. And today we are going to be talking about Ripple and XRP, as well as the vast majority of crypto and finance. And with that being said, I hope everyone is having a beautiful day. It seems as though things are unfolding rapidly around the global financial situation. We are going to be addressing it. So with that in mind, let's dive on in. So going back to October 3rd, so this is only 5 days ago now. I said, I feel like I'm watching the dollar chart, the DXY, more now than ever before. Now, as we look at the dollar, one thing that I was clear about going back roughly almost 3 months ago now was us reclaiming, and it was right around like 103, 103 and a half, it doesn't really matter, was reclaiming this area on the dollar because this was a big moment of truth on the strength of the dollar. Since then, we have outreached to a significant high of around roughly 107. This is the big moment of truth if we are going to continue this rally upwards and break out of the 108 level, which if we do, then I do believe that we will see 114 on the DXY. A big moment of truth for the overall market, though, would be the dollar rejecting here and breaking down below the 103.5 level. This will tell us that it's either one, going to retest the lows down here at around roughly 102 or at least around 101, or if we are going to create a lower low and break down below 100 and target some of those lower levels down there at around roughly 98, 96, and also 94, almost 95. Now, this should give us a significant move in the market. Bitcoin will most likely be breaking over $40,000 if we do see that big move down. But we are watching the dollar now more than ever before. Honestly, I'm more interested in the dollar chart than any other chart in this market right now. But beyond the dollar, what I'm actually looking at is the significant events. And I'm not talking about these events, right? Because this is what everyone is looking at. They're looking at the September PPI inflation. They're looking at the Fed meeting minutes. They're looking at the September CPI. They're looking at the OPEC monthly report, the jobless claims, all of these big events that, technically speaking, most of the people in this market don't even realize the actual data behind. Like, they just talk about it. They don't actually know the significance behind any of this. And 98% of the information that we get from the Fed is falsified information. It's fake. It's made up. It's nonsense. I mean, the CPI report doesn't even include utilities, food, shelter. I mean, let's be real. Would you trust that inflation report by the Fed? If you are answering yes, I think that you're crazy. Because the Fed has been lying to us for a very long time now. And beyond this, a lot of these events, well, I'm not really worried about them. I'm actually looking at the other major events, which we will get to here in a second. But we do see, in addition, markets will react to geopolitical tensions from this weekend. Volatility is the new normal. We're publishing our trades for the week shortly in 2022. Our calls made 86%. Subscribe to access our analysis and see what we're trading. And this is from the Kabaisi letter, by the way. But beyond this, right, what we recently talked about was the Fed and the printing and what they were doing in terms of constricting liquidity. But right now, I want to go back to June 13th. This came up on my timeline, and I want to go over this again because we're starting to see some pretty big events happening, and they're rolling out pretty quickly. So go back to January 17th of this year. Finance Law said, if everyone is selling U.S. treasuries at fire sale prices, the U.S. will simply buy up all of its own debt with the skyrocketing dollar. You can't default on your debt if you own most of it, thus resetting the cycle of US debt being the most stable in the world. And here we have from Janet Yellen. Yellen was questioned about China suddenly dumping $859 billion worth of treasuries due to war. Few understand the US has already been preparing for this event, which is why we're restricting the dollar supply by destroying crypto exchanges, yes, which we will get to here in a second, raising rates, and have $2.5 trillion in reverse repo waiting. Listen closely.
China and the Taiwan Strait scenario, in our select committee work, we did a tabletop exercise, and in response to sanctions against a Chinese scenario where there would be an invasion of Taiwan, the scenario was that China, the second largest foreign creditor of U.S. Treasuries, would dump that $859 billion in Treasury securities. How are you working with our allies internationally and also the Federal Reserve to deal with a situation where China would dump that volume of Treasury securities overnight?
So we are not engaging in specific exercises to address such a risk, but the United States, the National Security Council, is certainly concerned on an ongoing basis.
Well, Madam Secretary, I would encourage Treasury to make preparations and be on the ready for that scenario and work with the Fed on that and our allies.
So there you guys have it. I mean, again, Janet Yellen always giving us a great insight on what they're planning, which really is just, we don't have a plan. We'll just print more money. We'll just do this. We'll just do that, right? Which has worked, right? I mean, the dollar is extremely valuable. Everything around us is extremely cheap. I mean, the cost of living isn't skyrocketing or anything like that, right? But nonetheless, we also do see, by preparing for this event, the US has effectively discouraged it from happening. US treasuries can only be sold for dollars. A spike in dollar demand would allow the US to print and buy all excess treasuries. China would then see borrowing costs skyrocket, destroying their economy. The US wants to slow decoupling of US and China economies so they can transfer supply chains to India. Problem is, China's birth rate prevents them from having sustainable internal demand, and youth unemployment is 20% and rising. China is in trouble, either a slow bleed or they go to war. Now down here we have the steps. Credit downgrade, so nations dump US treasuries. Rapidly raise rates. Restrict swap lines, causing dollar shortage. Stage incident, in quotation marks. Dollar skyrockets. Panic spreads to financial system. Nations collapse. Print trillions and buy your cheap debt. Great reset. This is what we have been addressing, right? The timeline, the events, the plan behind all of the action.
China
and this was from August 2nd, by the way. The steps here. Now, a lot of people were probably questioning, well, what does crypto have to do with this? Right? It's very simple. When you have people rushing into crypto, and I'm pretty sure Finance Lot actually responded back to this. We actually see, where does the crypto part play in? Curious. They're destroying crypto exchanges so dollars can't be exported overseas. We've actually started to see banks banning any sales of crypto and even buying of crypto. Chase UK blocked their own customers from buying crypto. And I know that a lot of you out there are going to comment saying, oh, I don't have any problems buying crypto. I want you all to understand that I've talked to many people that have asked me questions about how to get into crypto, where to buy crypto, what exchanges to use, things like that. I walk them through it. I show them how to get into crypto, and guess what? Their bank denies them. And we're talking about, just typical major banking entities. So if you actually look at it, banks are trying to stomp out the idea of crypto as well. And they're all playing in accordance with what their plan is, right? Like the whole plan is already in place. And by blocking crypto exchanges, by blocking all of the crypto purchases, dollars have to stay satiated in the US. They don't want it being exported overseas, just like Finance Law is saying here. And this was, by the way, back in June. Today, this is more clear than ever. And outside of this, we just talked about the Fed pulling emergency OCE liquidity from banks, right? They pulled $20 billion just last week. Would you see, I find it disturbing people dismiss the sudden onset of conflict as totally unrelated to the Fed's sudden pullback to collapse the banking system. These two are related and the US's hands are dirty in both. What he's talking about is what we recently just seen in Israel. For those that don't know, right, I just talked about this, just talked about it last night actually. The video went live at midnight. We were addressing what the Fed was doing. We were talking about the reset. We were talking about what they want to do. They are ushering in the new system through these major events. Don't believe me? Well, it's okay, because we have proof. When we actually look at what's happening with Israel, they just declared war for the first time since 1973. The National Security Council approved a state of war in accordance with Article 40 of the Basic Government Law. Israel considers the war to have started at 6 a.m. on October 7th. Guess what? For those that don't know, look up the US with Israel financial aid. When you look at this, first and foremost, we have Israel is the largest cumulative recipient of US foreign aid until February of 2022. The US has provided Israel $150 billion non-inflation adjusted in bilateral assistance. We also see the second post here with, this is from the Federation of American Scientists, US foreign aid to Israel. This was in March of this year. They were already planning it in March. Again, we know for a fact that almost all of this is by plan. Guess what war means? It means that the US can print more money, which means a lot of the problems that we are seeing with the lack of liquidity, the major concerns, that all gets alleviated. And I know what you guys are probably going to say. Well, why would they want to print more money? That's their goal. Listen, when you hear Jerome Powell talking about his goals around inflation, guess what his goal is? Bring it down to 2%. What does that actually mean? That means that you, me, and everyone in the US loses 2% on their money year over year. They want you to lose money. They don't care about inflation. They don't care about debt. It's all made up. This is why the fiat system is a Ponzi scheme. This is why I talk about crypto. This is why I talk about gold, silver. And by the way, a lot of people are aware that gold can technically be manipulated. Gold has been manipulated. And this is also why when you look at crypto and you see a lot of these deflationary assets that don't have an unlimited supply, they're set at an X amount of tokens. Some of those tokens that are utility tokens, aka XRP, are extremely valuable because when we go into hyperinflation, which we are moving towards, and that's their goal to usher in the reset, guess what? Tokens like XRP, tokens like HBAR, tokens like, a few other ones. We've talked about them. QNT, for an example, is a great one. These are going to be very, very valuable assets. And I think that the entire crypto world will benefit greatly from that as well. But at what cost is what I always say. They want to destroy the fiat currency system. They want to usher in this new system. And we've been addressing this. And it all really kind of starts with war on currency. A lot of people think that the dollar is done, it's finished. I've said this 100 times over and over and over again. Going back to October 5th, we've seen Iraq to ban all cash withdrawals in US dollars. Now, Iraq, we've seen a lot of problems in Iraq. Once we've seen this announcement, a lot of the people in Iraq were actually, rioting. They were causing, a lot of, fear around this as well. When we really kind of look at what's going on with the US dollar, it's still king globally. The question is for how long? And the question is, what is the actual plan here? Because we're starting to see a lot of these nations push back, and it really kind of starts with the BRICS as well. The BRICS are a big one, and it kind of goes all the way back to what Finance Law was talking about with China, right? Like, we see China being in trouble. It's either a slow bleed or they go to war, but also it's the idea of borrowing cost and how the US is still utilizing the US dollar as a financial weapon. That's why all of these major nations are trying to push back. But this is also talking about, the transformation that's happening with BRICS and how they are accelerating this major transformation as well. For example, this goes back to August. This was August 20th. This got posted by Gold Telegraph. They were talking about the transformational week ahead. There is a risk when we use financial sanctions that are linked to the role of the dollar that over time it could undermine the hegemony of the dollar. This is Janet Yellen, by the way. This week, we will learn about the potential expansion of BRICS, which represents over 40% of the global population, which we did go over this, right? Obviously, a lot of countries want to join the BRICS, and they include many of the high-tier nations. We're talking about Saudi Arabia here, right? The petrodollar at question, Iran, UAE, Turkey, Argentina, Egypt, Indonesia, and a lot of these nations already agreed to join. All right? And there's a lot of things to look at there, but for the most part, we know that BRICS have been talking about a gold-backed stablecoin. They've been talking about, a new financial system that they want to bring in, a new payment system. All of this, right? Everyone thinks that this is going to, be the end-all be-all for the dollar, and everything's going to change. We're going to see a new reserve currency. We're going to see that, because that's what we, have been told. That's what they're telling us. The dollar is at stake here, right? Like, the dollar's in trouble. The bricks are rising. What are we going to do? This, that, whatever. And it's all fear-based. But if you actually look at the other side of things, we know that Vladimir Putin actually suggested that BRICS member nations should work towards establishing a single payment mechanism and transition to transactions in national currencies. All this technically means is what we have been saying. Every single major nation will have their own currencies, their own CBDCs. That's what this is essentially, saying. He also said that the global financial system based on the dollar is gradually collapsing. Yes, it is. And guess what? Everything that we have been seeing, these big events, these, major problems arising, it's all to accelerate it. This is why I say, when you actually look at fiat currencies, we're starting to see the demise of them. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen, tomorrow or next week or next month or even next year. But it's already starting. And for those that are only holding fiat currency in a savings account, what we are seeing is inflation eating those people alive. It is. Go to the store. Things are, 50% more expensive now than they were last year. That's only going to continue to be a trend, because guess what? What we are seeing is their plan emerging. We have seen all of the elite organizations talking about the push towards this new financial system, the reset. They've already outlined their blueprint for you. All you need to do is pay attention and look beyond the face value of half of these announcements. None of this is by coincidence, right? Even the major wars, all of them can be tied back to something. And this one, well, it's tied back to what the Fed has been doing. All of this is by plan to usher in the reset. This is what they want to do. They're causing the crash. They are causing everything that we have seen, all of the problems that are arising, and how they're saying, things are unstable. We need to look into, this, that, whatever. We need a CBDC. They are creating the problem. They already have the solution. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on if you guys want more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, this has been Nick. Peace out.